Let's talk about Liverpool for just a second, because when you win your third trophy like that and you're talking about volume in the press all the time and everyone's talking about spend of pounds to however many trophies there are or points per minute or pound or whatever you want to say about Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola, then it's worth just saying this team where they are right now is fantastic. But we're clearly seeing that this team is being progressed into the next era of Liverpool. And what felt like such a significant era of Liverpool, the club, the team, the evolution, Klopp, all those things, now it doesn't feel like a distant memory, but it does feel like the past. And that doesn't mean that the players that are still playing from there are so old or, they are so irrelevant to this team, but it does mean there is a transition that we have to look at. And I do think that this cup final was a great way to look at that, because you can see all the different iterations of what Liverpool are capable of, not only at a top level as a club, but also from the coaching staff and the players as well. So let's break down what actually happened yesterday. I know that it was such a close game. Cup finals are often tense affairs where you're not exactly going to play your best football. Liverpool have experienced that not only against Real Madrid, but also with the same happening to the likes of Spurs, I think, in the Champions League final, and maybe some other teams coughed and spluttered during Liverpool's Premier League win season. That wouldn't be the same case this season, by the way, because Liverpool and City are pushing each other. They are going stride for stride, and that's partly why it's so impressive that both these sides are evolving at the speed that they are. Not only the players, but also obviously off the field operations are continuing to be impressive, and we'll talk about that in just a second. In goal, you saw Kelleher, a great understudy, but also someone who seems like just a very naturally able goalkeeper, and someone who I love the distribution from him. He clearly has an eye for starting counterattacks again, which is exactly what Alisson is trained in, and something which modern football always requires. You can then go all the way back across the back line and see there is improvement, or someone passing down improvement from somewhere else. Trent's a generational player, so do I even need to talk to you about him? Andy Robertson on the other side has an understudy in Tsimikas that looks particularly impressive. And I was at the Burnley game where I think he was being kicked on the floor and the whole of Anfield rose to their feet. I think it was in that moment that he realised why he would want to be at Liverpool in the future. You then got combinations of Virgil van Dijk and Matip, or Virgil van Dijk and Konate, and you're looking at two experienced centre-backs who are passing something on to the next generation. We're then talking about Joe Gomez, who's also a fantastic understudy at the moment, but is also someone who said he wants more minutes, wants more football. So in the future, will he choose to stay at Liverpool or will he look to go elsewhere? And if Liverpool are able to get success, more cups like this, more situations where they can put him in high-profile playing situations, why would he not want to stay at a club? I know he might want to be the starting centre-back, but with Virgil van Dijk and obviously Matip being the two guys at the very top, you're either going to learn something or you are going to be in that side when they rotate so much. And let's face it, the rotation of those centre-backs is impressive, especially alongside Virgil. You then move into the midfield and you look at why Liverpool's buying, outside of the likes of Alisson and Van Dijk, who are fantastic pieces, but that kind of goes without saying that, of course, people want them. Let's get into that 40 to 60 million range where people start to debate if that guy's really a good fit or if that guy's really the guy that Liverpool really want. Fabinho. Manchester United fans, and Adam McCullough in particular, always turns around to me and says, could have had him, He really could have been someone that fitted the profile of our club. But that was kind of what fit so much of what Liverpool were doing at that point. They seemed like these obvious signings when you then looked at them, but that only really struck you when you'd seen them playing in such an accomplished manner after such great coaching and after such great man management from people like Jurgen Klopp. It's very difficult to find people within that squad that haven't shown some form of improvement, if not improvement, all across the board. Naby Keita is probably the one that people pick on the most. And yesterday, he came in for a injured Thiago Alcantara, who everyone felt terrible for, including me. I feel terrible for him. And it kind of shows what this sort of thing means to people like him and why there is so much passion within this team when so many people are writing off the League Cup as a competition, and yet there is a accomplished footballer on the sidelines who's crying over not being in this final. And you understand that, you get that. You don't want to let your teammates down, but also you don't want to be left out of something that feels very significant for a club, and something that I imagine Jurgen Klopp has been talking to his players about and saying, well, if we get this, then we can push on to this. Who knows? Who am I to say what Jurgen Klopp manages like? Certainly not me. You then look at the likes of Henderson, who is clearly a senior player within that squad, clearly a great leader, clearly someone that you want to start a final with, to set a precedent, to set the tone within the team. But not only that, he is, in more recent games, playing in a way that I've not seen him play in a couple of months now. And a few people began to doubt him at one point, whether he was a little beyond it, whether he was really needed in this team. And I've got to admit, there were times where I was asking questions of what Henderson's role in a progressive Liverpool side was. But then you see him playing in a 4-2-4 or a 4-4-2, however you want to characterise it. Or you see him getting his foot on the ball against Inter Milan, and you see that if you're a young player in that side, you will want to be watching that profile of player. There are plenty of other people in Europe who appreciate him, but don't necessarily shout it in the way we saw Xavi and Iniesta, Steven Gerrard, Zidane, name whoever you want to name, even your Frank Lampard's in there. Then you look at Harvey Elliott and Curtis Jones. Two guys who are so young that they shouldn't really even be anywhere near this Liverpool team if you think about their age. You can include Trent in that as well. But then you also look at the fact that Harvey Elliott is on videos, coaching specs and showing just levels of maturity that clearly being around this Liverpool team, being around this coaching staff is just giving him. And it's that kind of rapid improvement in a young player that gets them to that next level of being a footballer. I think that's what we saw Phil Foden do at Man City when he was kept by Pep Guardiola and not loaned out anywhere else. And then it's Curtis Jones, who's obviously a local lad, and is someone that people have a lot of affection for, but we're always wary around local people. Are we just wanting them in the team because we have that local affection for them? Are we wanting them in the team because they merit that place? And there are so many times where people have said, did Curtis have a good game? But then there are a couple of games in the Champions League this season where he has had a good game, where it felt like he was running it in one or two of the group stages, not least against AC Milan. So then move up front and look at the system that Liverpool have imposed up there, implemented. You've got Mo Salah, who seems immovable at this point. He genuinely is one of the best players in the world. And I know that Chelsea fans claim that he was kept quiet yesterday. But part of the reason that one side of that Liverpool team is quiet is because the emphasis goes on the other. And clearly, they want you to think that other side is being kept quiet. Because then when that side pops up and they're running at someone, well, seems all the more scary if you thought that guy was being quiet just 5 minutes ago. Then look at Mane in the middle, who's come in for Jota and Firmino. Firmino's on the injury table, so let's not talk about him for a second, but there is still very much a future for him at this club, or someone in the ilk of him. You then look at the two other signings, Jota, Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz was wanted by Conte and Tottenham. He was wanted by David Moyes and West Ham, and probably countless other European sides who we just didn't know their hat was in the ring for him. But it shows it's not just a Liverpool profile of player here. We're looking at someone that multiple clubs have profiled with multiple different needs and seen that they are the player that they want. That shows, in a similar way, I think, to the way that Fabinho was bought by Liverpool, that these guys are not only just good for Liverpool's system, they're also just technically proficient, brilliant players that a lot of managers think would fit into their team. And that isn't always the case. Sometimes when Liverpool sign a player, people sort of scratch their heads a little and say, where does this guy fit? Your Oxlade-Chamberlain types, maybe even your Jota types, who clearly fit some sort of statistical model that Liverpool have in there that means no one else has seen it, or no one else is seeing what you're seeing at that point. And Jota very much fits in with that Mane, Salah, now Luis Diaz profile of this many goals, this many chances created per game, this many shots, this many different attacking metrics, should we say, that he fits within. Now, maybe I'm just reading one too many blogs, and maybe there are people who are trying to quantify what it is to be a brilliant player. But if you combine those statistics with other things, such as Jurgen Klopp, such as Pep Linders, such as so many other great coaching staff at Liverpool, what do you have then? And if you combine it with what with what Jurgen Klopp, Freudian, with what Jurgen Klopp said post-game, they've been working with, I think it's Neuro 11 is what that company's called, on their penalty taking. Now, granted, Chelsea also went so many penalties before they missed, and can you really expect a goalkeeper to net like that? But do you also expect a goalkeeper to do that? It's another question. The point is, they've been working with people on very specific aspects of their game to hone that extra 0.5%, 1%, 2%, whatever you want to call it. It's a very small percentage of the game, so that when the players are in those positions, they know how to squeeze the absolute maximum out of it. You remember they had a throw-in coach not long ago. That worked out really well for Liverpool because suddenly they were making the most of their throw-ins, and suddenly the opposition probably heard a little bit about this as well. So not only are you better, but your opposition also questioning, what is it that these guys are doing from this throw-in that's honing that extra 5% out of the team? If you can successfully retain your throw-ins, like most people read from all those articles, it's fantastic. So what have Liverpool been told about keeping a penalty shootout in a certain frame, in a certain place, in a certain area? And what is each profile of that say that these specialists have come in attributed to each player? Is there someone speaking to each player? Is there just someone speaking to Klopp? Is there a 5-minute conversation with Mo Salah about his penalties? Or is there a 5-minute conversation with someone who's less good in the squad? Or is there a conversation with the whole team? The point is that when you move above Jurgen Klopp, which we will come back to in just a second, I kind of want to finish there, then you get FSG. And I get there's so much controversy around FSG, but what FSG do bring is a network of people who know about statistics. There's a network of people who originally were built around the idea of Moneyball. Now, it's a bit of a tired term in football now, but think where Moneyball inspired other people who are statisticians. You don't just take Moneyball and make that into the thing that your team is built around. There are 50, 100, 500, 1,000 other analytical systems and models that things fit within. Now, granted, Liverpool won't just take an analytics model and go, let's fit within this one. But I imagine there are a lot of people who've been out there testing things. There are a lot of people who say, well, maybe if we fit this into this model, then we get this guy. That's where Luis Diaz comes from. That's where Mo Salah comes from. That's possibly even where the likes of spending 75 million or 65 million on a specific player that you know is going to give you value comes from. And that's probably why Liverpool also walk away from certain transfers. Actually, this guy might not be worth the 60 million that you're asking, and there's a 40 million pound guy over here that fits. It's probably also why Liverpool moved so quickly on Luis Diaz. And then there's the final piece. Well, there's probably loads of pieces I'm missing. I'm not inside the club, but you get what I'm saying, of Jurgen Klopp and his coaching staff. Jurgen has been such a special manager. He's changed the belief system around Liverpool. He's changed so many other aspects of this club that when you bring a player into that camp and you bring such a brilliant manager into a team, it feels like Shankly 2.0. Maybe that's disrespectful to Bill, but I still think that there is that feeling in the modern age. If you mix the corporatism with the nostalgia, you kind of get Jurgen Klopp in there in a way, the perfect company man mixed with all the emotion. So whether he does choose to extend his contract or not, there is still a model here which you feel can work without Jurgen Klopp. Now, that's not disrespectful to Jurgen. Liverpool are going to have to deal with life without him at some point. In the same way, we may have to deal with life without Mo Salah, or life without Firmino, or life without Mane at some point soon. That's not to say that there's no nostalgia around those people. There's no happy emotions. There's no good memories with those people. It's just that at some point, this team has to transition. And the easiest way to accept transition is if you can accept change. Those two things are probably synonyms, so I'm basically just saying the same thing twice. But what I mean by that is, if you see change as a problem and you see transition as a problem, then it's going to make it almost harder to change this team. And we both know that there have been such subtle changes. Letting Gini Wijnaldum go, someone that people probably underestimated was a real problem. We're about to maybe sign James Milner to another contract. So maybe transition isn't just all about changing faces, changing personnel. It's also about being able to play 4-2-4, or being able to bring Divock Origi on, a player who seemingly was on the outs at Liverpool at one point, and make him change the face of the game again. By the way, you had Luis Diaz on that side before, Luis Diaz, or have I just got a list? The point is, there are so many more adaptable elements to this team that we would have seen at the start of last season that now we are seeing in this Liverpool team, because there weren't the same level of injuries earlier on this season. Now, there might still be injuries between now and the end of the season, but this team are chasing. I'll finish on this point. Rory Jennings said himself, and this is a great philosopher, you have the League Cup for a reason so early on in the season. Liverpool were watching Man City win it for a very long time. And it's also weighted that whole so many trophies for Man City thing, rightly so as well, by the way, but still the Champions League should weigh more than the League Cup on the scales, but that's another conversation. But it starts you in such a good way. And Liverpool watched City do it for quite some time. Does City watching Liverpool do it also have an impact on them? Does it mean that it feels like the title race, the chase just gets that little bit more intense because there is a trophy there that's fueling this team? They like to taste of that. They like to taste the blood. They also like to taste of things being very close and they stuck in there for long enough to win. There's a lot of different narratives in there you can pull out. But let me know what you think your narrative is at Liverpool. Let me know where you see the change at Liverpool. And let me know which players you think will be changing very soon. I'll be interested to hear what your overall thoughts on Liverpool are. I've got a video on Thursday that's going to be answering your questions. So your questions and answering some of your comments. So I'm going to pick out some of the best comments from all the videos we've done so far, or the whole plethora of 12 of them or whatever it is. But the point is, it's worth looking back through the comments and let me know what's good there. I've seen some great comments. I'm going to go reply to them on Thursday. So I really appreciate you guys' input on this channel. I really appreciate you secretly supporting this, continues to secretly support this, at least for the first 30 days. And we'll see where it goes from there. We're going to try and keep this going for as long as we can. It's going to be a great run. Thanks a lot for all the support so far. Let me know what you think of Liverpool. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.